Hi everyone, Miss Tricia here for Virtual Masterpiece Mayhem. This is our first video of 2025 for Masterpiece Mayhem, and it's about Marianne North, who was a botanical artist. The book that we're going to be reading is called Fearless World Traveler, and it's a picture book biography about Marianne North. And we're doing things a little differently this year, where at the beginning of the month, everyone who participates is getting a little watercolor pad and a travel watercolor set. So you'll be able to use that for the craft projects or really any medium you like. So what your mission is going to be, your artistic mission, after I share this book with you, is to do a botanical illustration. And generally when we see these, it's a white background and then whatever, say it was an orange, there might be an orange branch, orange leaves, and the orange fruit maybe in two different stages. And that would be all that was on the image. But Marianne North loved to put the backgrounds and settings in with her botanical illustrations, which was something very unusual. And you can kind of choose which way you'd like to draw your illustration. What I would love for you to do is, if you can find it in nature, that would be great, but it is the beginning of March, so it's still pretty sparse out there. So I understand if you'd maybe like to use a plant that's in your house, or maybe some fruit, or just anything that grows. Make a nice little illustration, and I'd love to see them when you're done. But first, let's share this story together about a very interesting woman, Marianne North, and this is called Fearless World Traveler, and there are those beautiful end papers that give us an idea of what her botanical illustrations look like. This is by Laurie Lawlor, and the pictures are by Becca Stadtlander. When Marianne North was born on October 24th, 1830, in her family's magnificent manor on the south coast of England, nobody thought she would amount to much. By the time she was a teenager, she'd fallen head over heels in love with music. Sometimes she practiced singing and playing the piano 8 hours a day. Horrid noise, her father complained. Art became her next fascination. Wherever she went, she carried a sketchbook to record her observations in pen and watercolor. Marianne's mother said she was wasting her time. When Marianne discovered a passion for botany, her family laughed. Ridiculous. Marianne's father, a member of Parliament who owned 3 country estates and a house in London, refused to hire private tutors for her. Why bother? Women weren't allowed to vote, hold office, serve on juries, own property, sign contracts, earn college degrees, or become professional scientists. Learn to behave like a proper young woman, everyone told Marianne, and one day, if you're lucky, you'll attract a rich husband. Strong, tall, and restless, blue-eyed Marianne felt imprisoned in dismal drawing rooms. Tight corsets and stiff floor-length gowns tormented her. Fancy balls in London were even more unbearable for shy Marianne. A penance, she called them. She decided to teach herself about plants. How? By reading books, studying nature, visiting botanical gardens and art museums, and asking questions of every art and plant expert she could find. She began her quest when she was 16, roaming alone in the fields and woods of her family's vast estate in northeast England. She hoped to find and paint every variety of fungus or mushrooms listed in a thick, illustrated guide from a local library. One day she rushed home with a mushroom the size of a turkey's egg. She tucked it beneath an overturned glass on her windowsill to watch it grow, just like a real scientist. Pop, crack! She awoke instantly the next morning. So did her family. The mushroom had burst into an astonishing 5-inch stinkhorn that shattered the glass and sprawled on the floor. Buzzing flies swarmed, attracted by the mushroom's rotten meat odor. What a smell! Marianne's family gave her the nickname Pop. Fortunately for Marianne, plenty of helpful, fascinating guests visited her parents' numerous homes. Her father's friends included famous astronomers, anthropologists, physicists, engineers, and botanists. Marianne enjoyed eavesdropping on the men's conversations and watching visiting landscape painters and botanical artists at work. When an artist came to create a family portrait, she became enthralled by the bright colors of oil paints. She thought the paints would be perfect for flowers. In 1855, Marianne's mother died. Although she was only 24 years old, Marianne promised that she would always take care of her irritable, demanding father. For the next 14 years, she kept her word, supervising his household and serving as his travel companion. She never married. When she suggested visiting the tropics to view plants, her father balked. To please his disappointed little Pop, he built her 3 heated greenhouses. Marianne still felt trapped and restless. Cold, damp winters triggered rheumatism so crippling she had trouble holding a paintbrush. When her 69-year-old father died in 1869, following a brief illness, Marianne was filled with grief and confusion. She was now 40. What next? An elderly widow invited Marianne to go on a trip to North America in 1871. Marianne jumped at the chance to cross the Atlantic Ocean and quickly packed a large supply of tubes of oil paint, brushes, pens, and paper for the journey. The tour of the American East Coast and parts of Canada thrilled Marianne. Endless wilderness with so many new species entranced her. However, when her traveling companion's scolding became unbearable, Marianne went her own way. She sailed to Jamaica to finally see the tropics. She didn't care that traveling alone was frowned upon for unprotected ladies. From then on, she would always travel by herself. "Hurrah for liberty," she wrote to a friend. On Christmas Eve, 1871, she stepped ashore in Jamaica and discovered a new world of balmy winds, fragrant blossoms, and lush trees swarming with shrieking birds. "I was in a state of ecstasy and hardly knew what to paint first," she said. She rented a run-down house in a secluded wooded valley. Her workday started at sunrise when she set off into the deep forest with paints, ink, paper, and easel. She painted without interruption, sometimes 12 hours a day. After several months, she returned to London with her finished paintings. Friends and family expected Pop to settle into a safe, ladylike life again. Marianne soon felt eager to escape. "I am a very wild bird," she told a friend. "I like my liberty." Marianne gathered a few clothes and many art supplies and headed back to the tropics. She was no longer a traveler who painted. She had become a painter who traveled. Between 1871 and 1885, Marianne trekked solo twice around the world, hunting for and painting rare and exotic plants on every continent except Antarctica. She visited 15 countries, some more than once. Travel wasn't easy. Journeys by steamship often took weeks. Typhoons and shipwrecks were constant dangers. To haul heavy art supplies, she used everything from local ox-drawn carts and lumber wagons pulled by mules to dugout canoes and sampans, small rowed boats with sails. She spent long days in the saddle. When mountain paths turned too steep or mud-choked for horses, she hiked on foot. If bridges were washed out by flooding, she made long detours and dangerous crossings by log raft. Without losing her balance, she waded through water above her waist to cross streams in rain-soaked Brazilian jungles. In Borneo, she successfully shot rapids in a fragile canoe. Swamp and jungle travel by canoe meant watching out for water snakes and alligators, not to mention ever-present leeches. In India, she rode evil-tempered camels and made journeys on the backs of elephants, like a walking tree and so slow, she later said about the elephant rides. Marianne slept anywhere, hammock, mat, or straw pallet. Often she shared her shelter with pesky rats, lizards, stinging ants, giant spiders, and poisonous snakes. More than once, marauding crows tried to steal her glittering tubes of paint. Never a picky eater, she consumed anything, from squid to mangoes, from crabs to guava. When food was scarce because of famine, she did not complain. Travel exposed her to many tropical diseases, including dysentery, intestinal parasites, yellow fever, and malaria. No inoculations existed. She relied on local cures and her own hardy constitution. Marianne often depended on the generosity and plant knowledge of native people. Although she found much to admire about how they lived in harmony with nature, her letters sometimes reflected the prejudices of her privileged upbringing. An early conservation pioneer, Marianne wrote about the alarming devastation she encountered: clear-cut forests, rampant invasive species, and water pollution. She wasn't afraid to criticize the British Empire for plundering colonial resources, or American commercial loggers who seemed intent on cutting down every giant redwood in California. Sadly, in many cases, her paintings are the only remaining record of rare species that are now extinct. As her collection of paintings crowded her London flat, Marianne began to wonder how she could share what she'd worked so hard to discover and illustrate. How could her artwork reach the most people, ordinary viewers and scientists alike? While standing in a weary crowd on an English railway platform on August 11, 1879, she had a brilliant idea. In haste, she wrote a letter to her friend, Sir Joseph Hooker, botanist and director of the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, offering to donate her entire collection of paintings and to pay for the design and construction of a special gallery in a quiet part of the gardens. To her delight, the Kew Gardens officials accepted. She hired an architect and began planning construction of the Marianne North Gallery. While her gallery was under construction, she spent 2 years on an exhausting marathon journey, exploring and painting in Australia, Tasmania, and New Zealand. She traveled by steamer to Hawaii and California, crossed the United States by train, and returned to England. On June 7, 1882, the Marianne North Gallery opened to record crowds and acclaim from London newspaper reviewers. On display were 627 paintings, each described in a printed catalog. Before the invention of color photography or wildlife film documentaries, Marianne's vivid images of exotic plants, animals, and landscapes offered views few people had ever seen. Visitors' enthusiasm, Marianne said, gives me fresh courage to go on. A few months later, she left for South Africa, where she completed 110 paintings in 9 months. During the next 2 years, in spite of exhaustion, growing deafness, rheumatism, and other health problems, she made a 5,000-mile trip to the Seychelles, islands off the coast of Africa. Next, she made an arduous journey to South America, her final quest painting the rare monkey puzzle tree in mountainous Chile. When she finally arrived in London in 1885, she spent the next year rearranging and expanding the gallery, which now contained 848 paintings. Marianne fled the hubbub of London 2 years later for a small, isolated cottage in the rolling countryside. She took along boxes of travel souvenirs, a stuffed Australian koala bear and platypus, shells and crystals. As soon as she moved in, she ordered the tennis court torn out to make room for a garden. Friends and relatives came to visit. Through the dark, cold winters, Marianne huddled near the fireplace and worked on the 1,727-page manuscript of her autobiography, Recollections of a Happy Life. To escape the chill, if only in her mind, she painted from memory palm-fringed beaches and azure water. On August 30th, 1890, 59-year-old Marianne died after a lingering illness. She was buried near her garden filled with the plants and flowers she loved so much. Marianne North had never given up on her dream to do something remarkable that no one expected. Her determination, courage, and curiosity remained with her to the end. "Did I not paint," she wrote of her life, "and wonder at everything?" And then there's this really great back matter in the book about Marianne North's legacy, paintings, published writings, and then there's some sources and source notes as well, and a who's who and some picture credits. So that was Marianne North, and I hope you enjoyed learning about her. So again, your assignment is to do a botanical illustration, and it can be of really any plant. And I know, like I said, we're a little short on plants right now, so you could also wait till something blooms or go from a book or whatever works. Just have fun drawing something from nature, and you don't need to use your watercolors and watercolor paper. If you'd rather use colored pencils or charcoal or anything, the media is up to you, and I hope you'll show me what you came up with. And our book next time is, let me see, Just Being Dolly. So that's what we'll share next. And you'll have a new little assignment. And I hope you have fun this month with me and learning about these artists. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon.